And since the 60s, Batman had many different animations with a variety of styles, tones, and especially characters. Along with the classic Adam West TV show, there was also The Adventures of Batman and Robin. Then came the Super Friends, The New Adventures of Batman, and in the 80s we had the Super Powers Galactic Guardians that were basically the group Super Friends or Justice League, with the same Hanna-Barbera style of animation but a little more evolved. We had stories that were a little more interesting, although it still was a kid-friendly TV show. But it was in this series that there was a very famous episode focused on Batman called The Fear, an episode that was first written to be a pilot of a new Batman animated series that would push the envelope in terms of darker stories for the character, since in the 80s, the comics of Batman were becoming way darker after classics like Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns. And since this was the 80s, this intended show would come way before Batman the Animated Series. And this pilot was written by none other than Alan Burnett, one of the creators of Batman the Animated Series. And the plot of this pilot would feature Batman facing the Scarecrow at the same time that his origin story would be told. But apparently producers thought that this pilot was too dark for a kids TV show at the time and decided to rework the story for the Super Powers Galactic Guardians show. Then we have this episode, The Fear, which now it became this cult classic episode of this show because it has these conflicting tones of being a kid-friendly show but at the same time having a very dark story in it. The episode starts with the Scarecrow committing some crimes to steal a chip that he will use in a technology to enhance his main weapon, the fear transmitter. That's right, here in this episode, the Scarecrow doesn't use the fear toxin yet, but a fear transmitter, which is a very cool weapon. I love the fact that he uses this skull to transmit fear. At the same time, his visual is kind of interesting, and he also has goons called the Straw Man, which is kind of awesome as well. Anyway, Batman shows up to stop the crime, and he starts chasing the Scarecrow until he ends up in an alleyway. But not just an alleyway. For some bizarre coincidence, is the crime alley. The alley that his parents got murdered. The Scarecrow realizes that Batman is afraid and somehow connects the dots that he can use that place to create fear in the superhero. Later that night, we see that Bruce Wayne is throwing a party in his mansion, and he receives the visit of Commissioner Gordon and a specialist in fear that is in town called Dr. Jonathan Crane. Of course, we know that this is the Scarecrow. By the way, he kind of looks like Jeff Goldblum for me for some reason, and in the 90s, for a possible 5th Batman movie in the Joel Schumacher franchise, I think fans wanted Jeff Goldblum to play the Scarecrow, and now we have a comic book with Batman 89, who is a fictional depiction of what the sequels to the Tim Burton's universe would be, that has the character Scarecrow with the looks of Jeff Goldblum, so I think it's funny. Later that night, Diana Prince, the Wonder Woman, comes to visit Bruce in the mansion, because of course this is a Super Friends TV show, or a Super Powers Galactic Guardians at least, so it requires the presence of other heroes there too. Even though she's kind of useless here in this story, but anyway. Bruce explains to her and Dick Grayson his backstory and the origins of Batman, and then we have this great flashback that shows the classic beginnings and evolution to make Bruce Wayne become Batman. We have him leaving the cinema with his parents. By the way, in this version, they are watching Robin Hood, which is very interesting because sometimes we have the Waynes watching Zorro, or sometimes watching Excalibur, like in the Zack Snyder's version. But the whole thing is very faithful to the classic origin, with the Waynes entering a dark alley and then being approached by the criminal that's probably Joe Chill. But here's the thing, since it is a kids cartoon show, because of the guidelines of the time, it couldn't show any weapons in any cartoon, so much so that other TV cartoons only show the weapons with lasers like G.I. Joe or Rambo. So here they figure a way out of showing a real gun, and it doesn't really show the shots or the Waynes being murdered. In fact, it only shows a lightning in the sky, and it's a very cool way to go around the whole gun thing. And then we see Bruce crying. And this actually reminds me of my own short movie that I call Batman The Darkest Knight, that you can see right here in the channel. And it also depicts a version of the Wayne murders, but with Batman going back in time to try to stop it. And I have this very similar shot with Bruce Wayne crying and also Batman crying in the shape of a gargoyle with a tear. Anyway, after that we also see a montage of Bruce Wayne training all these years to become the Batman, and it's a very cool way to show his evolution. And there is a very interesting thing that they call Batman in this show the man with no fear, which is a quote that people use for the Daredevil actually in the comics, but it's interesting that they also use it for Batman here. And also the voice of Batman is done here by none other than Adam West himself, showing that he actually portrayed this character way further than just the classic TV show. And even though it is a kids TV show, his voice performance here is quite more sober and serious than the classic series, because somehow the material here requires that his performance it's more like that instead of the comedic version. So that's an interesting fact. Then the rest of the episode is basically Batman trying to face his fears and fight them back, going back to the crime alley and facing Scarecrow and his fear transmitter in order to beat it. And I won't give many spoilers because the whole episode is here on YouTube if you want to watch it. I will put the link of the first part right down here in the description of this video. But even though, like I said, is a kids TV cartoon, the script of Alan Burnett is able to create many memorable shots of Batman with a little more dark tone than expected for this kind of material. The final showdown of the story takes place in this plantation area that has a barn and some scarecrows, and one of the scarecrows has the skull with the fear transmitter of the Scarecrow. And when it's used against Batman in this end, we have this great scene where he sees his parents in the form of Robin and Wonder Woman that are trapped by the Scarecrow. So it is a story that really plays with the psychology of the character, which is something completely unusual for this kind of show, going very deep into the struggle of Batman in fighting back his fears. And my favorite scene in this episode is when Batman is finally able to conquer his fear in this climax by jumping over the image of the criminal that murdered his parents, and in real life he actually jumps over the Scarecrow with the fear transmitter skull and he breaks the skull with his own hands, which is quite memorable and triumphant. Then we have the appearance of Superman, Green Lantern, and this guy Indian here that has a tornado in his legs that appear to help. But the final fight actually takes place in a barn with Batman going after the Scarecrow. And again, the villain tries to use the fear transmitter against him, but now he is completely invulnerable towards the weapon, making the Scarecrow fearful of him, and he is able to unmask the villain and show his real identity, Dr. Jonathan Crane. Also, we see a very interesting display of Batman detective skills in this episode, because earlier in this climax we saw a crow entering the Commissioner Gordon's office and delivering a message to Batman with the location of where Robin and Wonder Woman are trapped. And later Batman reveals that he discovered Crane's identity in this moment because the crow kept his eyes fixed on the man during the whole scene. So this is real detective skills. Take that, Batman Robert Pattinson. So this is a great episode that I think you should watch it, just to see the seeds that were beginning to be planted towards the classic Batman the Animated Series with its darker and amazing tone. Also, Super Powers Galactic Guardians is a cool TV animated series. There are many classic characters from the DC lore, and it's interesting to see them in these earlier versions. Also, the cartoon opening is very cool with this first shot of Darkseid just holding the planet Earth. And what about you? Did you watch the episode The Fear from Super Power Galactic Guardians? Comment below, what do you think? And please don't forget to also see my commentary playlist of Batman the Animated Series that just finished the first season of episodes, so you can watch all the commentaries in this link here on the screen. And if you are liking the BATGUS content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like in this video for more. See you in the next Bat video, and bye bye.